Okay. Okay, let's see. Where was I? Okay, Laulima. So when you go to Laulima, and I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with Laulima, there is a section called weekly engagement. And on it, there's a real simple response that you have to do for week 1, which is called participation verification. And I see all the, all the folks that have verified, and I see a new one, which is good. Okay, so I got a question for Reka. So can you give me a little bit of background on what's happening with your class registration?
Hi, I'm Reka, and I was taking other class before registration this class, but I would like to graduate next semester, so I had to take communication class more than 5 class this semester, so I'm taking this class now. Yeah.
So are you but you're registered already, right? You're registered and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're registered in this class.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So you just haven't been able to take this class until now.
Yeah, I did it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so like I said earlier, I think the majority of you have gotten through the verification, but for just a handful that haven't, please take care of that. I think today might be the deadline. So, okay, so with that, I see that most of you have your videos on. I would highly encourage you to flip your videos on, just because this is a communications class, and part of what we will talk a little bit about today is some of the elements in this chapter called media richness. And media richness really kind of gets into how some of the tools that we use achieve as best as it can kind of a face-to-face experience, and being able to see the person, you'll see is pretty important when trying to establish how well you're communicating whatever subject matter it is, or idea you're trying to get across, or point you're trying to get across. So I would highly encourage your turning your video on, so at least you can sort of see some of the reactions that perhaps some people might give, whether they are in agreement with me or disagreement. You kind of see the nuance in the facial expressions and things like that. Okay, so let's kind of dive into the chapter, and we're just gonna kind of go over the kind of the concepts of chapter 1. And let me go ahead and let me let somebody in here, and then I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'll go over some of this material through the PowerPoint that I have. Okay, so where's my PowerPoint? Okay. So this is let's see, so I'm assuming you guys can see this. And this is just chapter 1. So let's advance here. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, this whole idea of media richness is a way of kind of analyzing the computer-mediated communication tools that best convey whatever what the topic of communications is, and how effective is it? What are some of the human social systems that are achieved as a result of this computer-mediated tool, and I'll just call it CMC. CMC is efficient for sharing content information, but again, there's a lot more in communications than just the information. So, this second bullet about human social systems, it is pretty complex when you start thinking about how it is that you actually convey, communicate, get your point across. And one of the key things to remember is that it's not as simple as just, sending a text or sending an email. All the tools that we'll cover are kind of a rich assortment of choices you have to make. And at the end of the day, it's kind of something that doesn't happen in one shot. It's like a continual effort of communicating, and what tools you end up using will kind of determine how well you are able to achieve whatever you're trying to communicate. And then we'll talk a little bit about these 4 constraints. So the first constraint is feedback immediacy. Now, I don't know if you folks have sort of asked yourself, when somebody sends you a text, what is the typical time frame by which you respond to that text? And then similarly, if somebody sends you an email, what is the expected response of that email? So maybe just as a quick exercise in the chat, for the question around text, just drop a word in there. How quickly are you expected to respond to a text? So just drop it in the chat, and then I'll take a look at it. Let's see if anybody's coming in here. Okay. Christopher says 10 minutes. 3 days. Wow. 5 minutes. Okay, no, this is good. So that's interesting because typically I think that text usually warrants a pretty quick response for whatever reason. And there's no hard and fast rule, but that's sort of my expectation. And then email could potentially go a little longer, like, a couple of days. 1 day is good, but again, it depends on how busy you are. Okay. So again, immediacy is really a question of how quickly some of these tools enable a response. Next one is nonverbal cues. And when you start thinking about how you might talk to somebody, and when you're talking to that person, they're looking at you, and they can see your facial expression, they can see your body language, they can see whether you are kind of like paying attention or not. And that's kind of why I like to have the videos on, because that way I sort of at least get a sense as to whether you're sleeping or, not really fully present. Now, these are nonverbal cues. And when you start looking at CMC, the various tools that you choose to use will have these nonverbal cues. And of course, video is probably the one that is the best in terms of seeing whether or not somebody is actually kind of responding to what you're saying or paying attention to what you're saying. But when you talk about text, there is no visual cue. But with that said, I will say that's why a lot of these tools have now incorporated emojis, so you can actually give kind of an indication of what you're feeling, when sending somebody a text message. So, a good example is that, maybe you're trying to convey a joke or something, and let's say you said something like I don't know, you said something like to somebody, hey, you kind of really dressed up today, and maybe they didn't really dress up, and then you can end your statement with a little smiley face or something, and they kind of know that maybe that's a joke. So that's kind of where the nonverbal cue might come in. It kind of sets the tone that may not have been conveyed, visually. Language variety. Now, as comm majors, I think you all appreciate the spoken word or the English language and the choice of words you might end up using. And so some words might be a little bit more, could be viewed as being harsh. Some words might be more softer in terms of its conveying of a message. That's what language variety is all about. And then let's see, what's next? And then personal focus. Again, personal focus kind of comes into play. Things like how you might convey a personal opinion, or where you are in terms of the topic. How do you view that personally, right? So it's not just purely the communication in terms of the content, but how do you imbibe that with your personal. I don't know if any of you have done any kind of public speaking or even like taking a public speaking class, and you've actually been asked to take a stand that might be different from what you would normally do. So you have to take an opposing stand. So maybe it's a topic that's kind of controversial. Let's say it's legalizing marijuana or something, and then you're asked to take the stand of not legalizing it, but you actually want it to be legalized. So you have your personal focus, but you have to take the assignment is how do you argue not to legalize marijuana, because that was the assignment. So how do you disengage from the personal aspect of it? That's kind of what personal focus is about. Okay. So in this chapter, you'll hear stuff about lean to rich, and we'll go over some of the things that are what they call lean, or pretty like Spartan. There's very little emotion or visual context. So something that's impersonally written, or a memo, and this could also be like text, right? If you're just texting somebody, I mean, it sort of assumes a couple things that you've done. You've gotten the person's mobile phone number. They probably are somebody that so there's that connection, and you are texting them just to let them know that you're waiting for them, or you've arrived at a destination. And it's just text, and what they call lean. So that's the lean end of the spectrum. Now, email has a little bit more kind of content associated with it. And I don't know if you folks have encountered emails that kind of get you kind of worked up. Maybe, maybe it's somebody like a boss or somebody, and they sent you an email that got your blood pressure going. That can be conveyed in a text, or through text via an email. And the chapter also talks about how you might view a text coming from a boss or somebody that's maybe subordinate. So there's that, and how does that personal hierarchical situation play into how you receive that email. Texting, I mentioned a little bit about that, and again, text tends to be short. It's highly dependent on the kind of language you might use, but it's going up the ladder here from lean to a little bit more rich. And I think texting, as you incorporate things like emojis, there's a little bit more variety of things you can communicate through text. Okay, so now we're kind of going up the ladder, and then there's a phone call. Now, again, typically, I'm assuming that you're picking up the phone because you know who's calling you. I tend to not answer calls that I don't know who the the caller is. So that's where like you've added a lot of contacts in your contact list, and when they call you, the name pops up. That's pretty useful because it gives you a little context. And but again, those are some of those like nonverbal cues. But actually, the actual call itself, when you're talking to somebody on the phone, you can hear a lot more of what it is that they're trying to convey, right? If they're sad, and they're either sad or maybe they're kind of distressed about something, it'll come through, in their voice, and that's a little bit more than just the content, right? So those are some of the sort of the nonverbal cues. It'll give you some nuance as to how they actually feel. So that's a little bit more in terms of the being more of a rich experience. Okay, so what's next on this ladder? Okay, so video conferencing, and video conferencing is kind of what we're doing now. And prior to Zoom, and I guess you got to thank the pandemic for this. There were video conference tools that were getting incorporated into some of the business environments, but it was never as sort of simple and easy to use like Zoom. And when you're doing a Zoom conference, and it doesn't have to be Zoom, right? It could be a Teams call, or it could be Google Meet, or any of the, I think Microsoft has WebEx. These all give you sort of the video aspect of it. And then as we, talking to each other on a video conference call, you definitely do see the person, and you can, get a sense of, are they with you? Are they not paying attention to you? Are they, Are they laughing at your jokes? Are they at least smiling in some way? Those are really important feedback mechanisms. And again, a lot of what is talked about, from a CMC standpoint is how does the CMC leverage technology to achieve a rich kind of face-to-face encounter. And so the face-to-face encounter is kind of the standard, right? It's kind of the gold standard for how people over, thousands of years have been interacting with each other. And the face-to-face is, it's real time. It's right there. It's like in your face. And a lot of information is conveyed in that in-person interaction. So how do these computer-mediated tools try to achieve that level of communication? So that's the spectrum of lean to rich. Okay, so this is just this is in the book, and it's just a kind of a way to show the comparison, between the different forms of communicating. From some of the lean was starting with, the written report, you got the email, you got the text message, and what's see, it says available, feedback is available, email less available. That's the point I'm trying to make about, what's the expectation of your responding to an email. Text message, like I said, I usually find that being a little bit more immediate, as long as you got your phone and you saw the message come in. And again, this there's ways of stylizing it, especially with stuff like emojis. And then you got a telephone conversation, right? So again, it's just feedback is available. You got personal, you got language variety, but it lacks the facial and physical gestures. Okay? And video conferencing, you got, feedback is available, more formal. You got reduced facial and physical gestures, but it's there, right? Like in this case, I'm sharing a screen and I don't get to see all of you. So I only see what's on my kind of like right-hand side. Now I can click on this grid and see what shows up on the grid. But see, even the grid doesn't show everybody. So I don't know what everybody's doing or thinking. So that's kind of problematic. Let's see. Let me and one of the things that I kind of gets me about Zoom is that it comes up and it just puts this whole set of this matrix right in front of the slides that I'm presenting, and now it kind of obstructs my view here. But let me do this real quick here. Okay, let's carry on. Okay, I'm gonna have to and I messed myself up. I got the screen of all the video kind of covering the slide, but I can do this. Okay, so 3 fits to the medium. So you got language as a medium fit, communication, task, efficiency, and again, when they say medium, they're talking about the CMC and how well does this stuff fit into that medium, and the communication function. So these are 3 things that need to fit into the medium that you decide to use. Okay, so language. What is language fit into the medium? So words are everywhere, but meanings can be hard to interpret. And I kind of mentioned that it's a, I used to do a column in the Star Advertiser, and when I would edit it, and I would really try to pay attention to, is what I'm saying in my sentence conveying what it is that I want to communicate. And sometimes, it takes some, that's why I really appreciate people that can really write well, because, they can really get their concepts across. And that's another reason too, that I will say that for all of you as communications majors, it's really important to proofread what it is that you're reading, because, or what it is that you're sending, because you might think you know what you wrote because you wrote it, but it may not have been clearly captured, in the words that you selected. So, a good rule of thumb is, if you've written something and you proofread it, try to read it as if you were the recipient, or read it as somebody that, obviously isn't you. Because if you are reading it just because you wrote it, then you're going to read it kind of with the bias of what it is that you just, wrote. So if you can put yourself into another perspective, I think that's like really helpful. Okay, so visual representations, and sometimes, when communicating a concept, or you're trying to convey something like, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, how sometimes you have to tell somebody, oh yeah, go to La Lima and go to the left hand column, and there's a menu, and select weekly assignments or weekly engagement. And if you think about how do you say all of that, it's kind of like, a lot of text and a lot of words, and it's almost kind of tiring just to think about how you would write that all down. And that's why, some applications have these screensavers where they can either grab the screen, or you can do little mini videos of actual screenshots, and that makes it really much more easily conveyed as a piece of information or some content that you want to share out. So that's a handy tool. Okay, and then if you're taking a math class, or you're in some sort of statistics or some kind of situation, could be work or what have you, and you want to convey something like describing the area inside a circle or something. It's really hard to describe using just words. Sometimes an equation might be much simpler. Okay, so again, this is just a visual way of looking at how the task at hand fits the medium that you're thinking of using. So you got the lean to the rich, and you have things like how does feedback, how quickly does feedback get to you? What are some of the nonverbal cues that can be sent along with your communications? How are you getting language conveyed, in the most accurate, and from the receiving end, is it getting the message across? And of course, the personal focus. How are you conveying, whether it is, imbibing some of your personal view, or perhaps you want to be somewhat maybe impersonal about it, then you could probably deal with it in a report or something more text-based. All right. And this is just another kind of graphic representation of how you go from rich medium to lean medium. And there's a section in the book. Let's see. I think it's and this diagram is also, you can find it on page 19. And what they try to convey here is that creativity and planning, you might be able to trigger some of that creativity with some lean communications, in the form of a text prompt or some quick prompts that start the ideation process. So that's kind of where the author is sort of talking about how creativity could be stimulated. But then as you start to go up this ladder of decision making, and problem solving, then you need to have more content, incorporated into your communications. So it's not going to be just text, right? It's going to be more than that. And then as you go up this ladder, where you have task implementation and performance evaluation, again, it really warrants more kind of interaction. And then at the high end of this, whether it's negotiations or conflict resolution, it could require a multitude of not only rich media, but also, as I mentioned earlier, the repeated efforts to bring people together and have them understand what it is to be kind of on the same page. And I'll occasionally kind of throw in some real world examples, and I'll share with you something that I've been working on, and it's called the Digital Equity Innovation Awards. And what I did was, in the beginning, and this is the Digital Equity Innovation Awards will take place on October 9th. But I started this process back in like April, May. So it's been going on for a little while. But in the beginning, it was some idea generation, and it could have been definitely. I know what sort of started it was. I was ideating with a friend of mine, partly over the phone, and said, hey, I'm interested in doing this. How would you like to kind of be involved with it? And it was kind of a team effort, right? Because one person can't be doing a whole innovation award. It takes a multitude of folks. And then it kind of evolved into okay, so we need to pull together the kind of the planning team, and we need to meet on a kind of a regular basis. So we decided to meet like every other week. And the thing that's kind of key to this example is that it involves not only the people that were going to eventually get awards, but it involved the counties of all the the neighbor island counties like Maui and Kauai and Sini County of Honolulu and the Big Island. You got the counties involved, and now you got the PEGs, and the PEGs are community access. So community access are the channels like Olelo. I'm sure you folks have all seen Olelo. And there's neighbor island counterparts. Like on Kauai, you have Ho'ike. In Oahu is Olelo. On Maui, you have Akaku. And the Big Island, you have Naleo. So these are all the community access television, and they were partners as well. And so, we're now going up the ladder, right? We're going up the ladder. Now we got more people, more more things to decide upon. And what ended up, happening, and this is just the natural evolution of, this particular visual, this graph here, is that, it might have started off as a phone call and a text, but it quickly evolved into much more. And even though, we're now at a close to an implementation, and we have our Zoom calls have gone from 1 week, every other week, to every week. And, October, which is going to be the October 9th is the launch date when we announce who these winners are. That's not far off. And that's not far off from the calendar, right? You can see it. You can see it not too far away. So over the course of this particular project, it incorporated a lot of stuff that, needs to happen. So that's kind of an example of how, these CMCs come into play over the course of a whole, project. Okay, so language, task, function fit. Now, fit the language to the constraints of the medium. You got the fit the task to the constraints of the medium, and fit the function to the constraints of the medium. So each of these, I kind of alluded to, in terms of just the example of doing, this Digital Equity Innovation Award, and depending on what the task is, you use the medium that is best suited for that particular task. But once it gets into complicated ground where you are, now getting ready to implement, and people have to know what it is that they have to do, it gets, everything comes into play. Everything comes into play. It gets complicated. It gets complicated real fast. Okay. This next, part is really, how do you best apply some of this? And the example that I shared is one, I mentioned earlier about employee supervisor communication. And as you, start to kind of go through your careers, you'll encounter some of this, hierarchical communications, and what's the best way to manage that. Phone conversations, they're best for things like approachability, things like supportiveness, professional development, and of course, when you apply these things, like video conferencing is effective, except as a substitute for face-to-face. Because again, face-to-face is, like I said earlier, kind of like the gold standard. But with that said, during the pandemic, when, we were trying to pull people together to talk about how do we solve some of this digital divide that was created because, everybody stayed at home, and you realize that not everybody is connected. It's turning out that, we could have never done this in a face-to-face manner. There's no way that Neighbor Island participants, stakeholders, in this particular effort are gonna fly over to Honolulu, or even, let's say we had to fly to the Neighbor Islands just to have a weekly meeting. It just doesn't physically kind of pan out. So in the case of, the work we do in digital equity, technology was really something that helped to make it happen, So, so just a little side note, the Digital Equity Innovation Awards are also leveraging technology. So we're not doing the awards, in a face-to-face manner, expecting everybody to fly to Honolulu. We're going to do the Innovation Awards via video and have them broadcast, over the various community access television. In this application that we're talking about, the supervisor application, sort of face-to-face is sometimes good, with your supervisor. Overuse adds stress to, potentially stress to the workplace relationship. Texting sometimes can be viewed as unprofessional. It does lend itself for miscommunications. So that's some of the pros and cons. There is this sense of loyalty, to messaging apps, and I'm sure you all have your favorites. Whether it's I don't know. I use this message like on the iPhone is iMessage, and it just if it goes over to Android users, it's usually just a SMS message. But others, have their favorites, like like I don't know, WeChat, and I forget the one that Facebook has, but I don't use it. So it does provide you, because of the loyalty to your messaging app, the social relational usefulness. It provides multiple verbal cues, functionality, satisfaction. As I mentioned earlier, emojis. Before the actual decision on what graphic would be associated with the emoji, there were like text emojis. I don't know if you guys have been exposed to the text emojis, but I thought the emojis were kind of cool. And now, now with some of the avatars that are now being made available, you can actually customize an avatar and use that in your messaging apps. And personalized for different relationships and different groups. I think the main point here is that you can join some groups in messaging apps that would be specific to a particular interest that you might have, and so that is kind of like like-minded. It's personalized for the relationships that you've cultivated, within that particular messaging app. Perceived media richness. You have participant platform, and you have, let's see, this is things like Instagram, right? This chapter does talk a little bit about, the media richness of Instagram. I have to admit that when Facebook bought Instagram, I thought, wow, they must know something that I don't know, because when they acquired Instagram, it was like $1 billion. And I thought, wow, that's incredible at the time that, a company like Facebook would actually acquire what I thought at the time was like a photo, kind of like a photo sharing app. But they obviously saw much more in what Instagram was conveying. And that's why it warranted such a high price. So again, here's the, they get into a little bit about Instagram, and I'm kind of curious, to see what you all do with Instagram. Maybe well, I won't put you on the spot here. If you wanna find me on Instagram, you can find me at Bytemarks, BYTEMARKS. Medium perceived richer when useful for personal self-expression, social interaction. Let me go back here. So, in this example of, sort of perceived media richness and drawing upon Instagram, back in the day when Instagram first came on, and this is when, social media, like at the time, Twitter and Facebook, signing up was signing up because your friends were on it. And so there's a, sort of perception of this crowd of folks that you've signed to be, followers of your page are people that you know. So it's a, it's a relatively safe place for personal self-expression and interaction, with the people that are part of your, your group. and it's been pretty interesting. It's certainly evolved quite a bit from then, and with the, with applications like TikTok, which, I'm on as well, but I tend less to use it as a medium for personal expression than a medium for, finding out what's going on, around the world, like what's trending and what's kind of picking up the, the hype cycle. Streaming services, some of the things like, I don't know, just as an example, like Twitch and others. It's another means of kind of building not only the personal self-expression, but content that you're interested in conveying, and some of that could be like Twitch or some of the gaming environments. Immediate feedback, verbal and non-verbal variety, and of course, as the sort of reputation or community that you develop on any of these streaming services, it sort of increases the sociability or the relationship closeness to that group. Build a collective sense of online community, and again, there's a whole slew of online environments that you could participate in, like everything from Dungeons and Dragons to some of these online gaming environments, and create a loyalty. Negative media richness, there are some criticisms about some of the negativity that is generated on some of these platforms, and it can introduce personal stress, anxiety, media fatigue, decreased decision-making quality, reduce personal coping. Now, cell phone advertising, I don't know if I would be as general as cell phone advertising, but more specifically, like some of the advertising that comes on your Instagram page. So I'll give you a quick example, and I'll speak to some of these influences: customer decision making, higher costs, less efficient, stimulates attention, interest, search behaviors. Now, I'm sure you folks have kind of seen the trend lines with some of the social media, especially with things like Instagram, where you might be doing a search for something, and then all of a sudden, because of the cookie settings or whatever, you've all of a sudden gotten all these advertising that comes up on your Instagram feed, and that that has certainly happened. I mean, I was kind of curious about some of the like solar generators, because as you all know, as a result of the Lahaina fires, there's kind of this new trigger that the electric companies will shut down power because of things like red flag warnings. And so whenever there's a red flag warning, they have I guess I would call it the right to shut down power, because they don't want to run into the situation where a fire might get started and they get blamed for it. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll check out some of these solar generators, and I kind of searched for generators made by Jackery and Goal Zero, and sure enough, they all popped up on my Instagram feed. I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, in practice, some of these ads that appear on your feeds may or may not have little effect on user action, sharing information with others. There's still critique out on whether or not this form is viable. I actually think it does have an impact on some of your potential buying habits. It could be vague. It could reduce sort of the human agency and drive tech determinism, and lack of empirical support based on the negative, whatever negative content is being shared out there. So that's the kind of lack of the empirical support. Displaced constraints. And important perspective, constraints on a central concern, and this could be, affecting national sort of attitudes and perceptions of things going on, globally. And again, it just, the point being brought up is that it stimulates more research, in this topic of computer-mediated communications. So let's see, do I have anything else? I think that's it for the presentation. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. You who's still with me, and you can, I guess, good time to turn the cameras back on, and I will open it up for any questions that you might have. Happy to kind of like answer any questions, and tell you what's kind of in store for upcoming like the quiz and all that kind of stuff. Now, did I get the subject across? You guys ready for the quiz? So here's what I'm going to do right after this. Well, in fact, I can do it right now. I'm going to, let's see, where's my Cognella page? Okay, maybe I'll do that right after I convene this class. I'm going to go and make the quizzes available for this chapter, and you should be able to access it via the Cognella website. Now, let me just see if I can, where is it? And so once you are able to access that page, then go ahead and take the quiz, and it'll log whatever the results are, and then I'll give you till next week Tuesday to do that. So you have a little bit of time. And if you, let's say, encounter any difficulty accessing that particular resource, just email me, and then I'll try to get the Cognella folks on the email and make sure that you're able to access it. But once you've got the book, you should be able to pretty easily get access to it. Let's see, where's my any questions about this stuff? No? Okay, so that's the quiz. And then again, the extra credit is still on the table for anybody that's interested in extra credit. I mentioned a couple ways of getting some added points, the 10 points through the Bite Marks Cafe, or well, now I'm trying to remember what the other 10 points was. And then I'll put it in the weekly resources. I'll just list out what they were and how many points. And then there's a couple 30-point opportunities if you're interested. One is the digital navigator part-time job, which you actually can get paid for. So that's a 30-pointer. And then the hack, the Hawaii Annual Code Challenge, that's another potential 30 points. So anyway, those are some things that you might want to consider. But in the meantime, straight out of in fact, maybe I'll just put it in the syllabus. The points for the class are going to be the quizzes, and then on Thursday we have a guest speaker. And then what I'll do with the guest speaker is I'll make a Google sort of available for you all. And then it's pretty simple, just fill out the survey, respond to the questions. There's only like 5 questions, and 2 of them I mentioned earlier, super easy. One is you better know the name of the person that's speaking. So if you are listening, you're going to pick up the name and you're going to pick up the organization, right? And then feel free to ask them questions about some of the stuff that we're doing and learning, and that way you can kind of get their perspectives of this particular topic area. So Thursday is going to be a guest speaker, and then the response on your part will be the form, and then with the form you'll get additional points. So those should all add up to the overall course grade. Pretty straightforward. And then so the whole idea behind this class is, if you keep up with the class on a weekly basis, you've pretty much got it, mastered. So it's just a weekly activity that you have to do that kind of keeps you engaged, with the topic that we're discussing. Okay, any questions before I let you go back to your whatever you're doing on campus or elsewhere? Okay, well, seeing none, I will let you all go. And again, if you have any questions or anything, just feel free to email me, and then I'll respond via email. Okay, so thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.